Hello and welcome to P Guru's channel. I'm your host Sri Iyer. I have some stunning news today to share with you. You may have read this in the newspapers yesterday or on online sites. Not much has been talked about in India's media, which is unfortunate because this is something that is very, very significant. To know a little bit more about this, Professor M.D. Nalapat is here to join us. Professor Nalapat, welcome to P Guru's channel.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, viewers, before I, invite Professor Nalapat to weigh in on this, I'm going to just set the context here. Senator Bob Menendez, of Democrat from New Jersey, a ranking member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, was joined by 19 of his Senate colleagues in urging the Trump administration to grant emergency refugee protections to Sikh and Hindu communities in Afghanistan facing persecution as religious minorities. This is huge. This is probably the first time I have seen 20 senators across party lines signing this thing and submitting it to Mike Pompeo. I'm going to read the names of some of the senators because this is going to surprise you, the viewer. There are Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer, Tom Tillis, Dick Durbin, Patrick Leahy, Dianne Feinstein, Kristen Gillibrand, Tim Kaine, Kamala Harris, Bob Casey, Chris Van Hollen, Bernie Sanders, Patty Murray, Chris Coons, Ed Markey, Tammy Duckworth, Jack Reed, Mark Warner, Ben Cardin, and James Lankford, a Republican from Oklahoma. So we have across the aisle, we have Democrats, we have Republicans, and we also have an independent, Bernie Sanders, signing this letter. And this is very significant to know a little bit more about the groundwork, the hard work that went into getting this letter written and submitted to Mike Pompeo. Professor Nalapat, perhaps you can share with us what was the work done, who did this thing, and all credit to these people who did all these hard yards.
Well, I'd like to compliment the Indian American community, first of all. And the community, the Indian American community has worked very hard, frankly, to conscientize their senators and representatives about the absolute genocide that's taking place of the minority communities in some countries. Now, take, for example, Bangladesh. Very simple statistics are enough. The statistics of the minority populations in different countries of South Asia, let's say 1950, 1970, 1990, and 2020. Just these four statistics. It'll be easy to get them. And you'll see the horrifying story that's taken place. Now, whether it's Pakistan, where it's dwindled to almost nothing, whether it's Bangladesh, where the Hindu community is, frankly, I mean, now, it at one time it was about 40%. Now it's about 15 or 16%, I'm told, and still declining. Or Afghanistan, this is what is happening. The minorities are being eliminated. And I'm very happy they have submitted to Mike Pompeo, because this is a rebuke to Pompeo and his boss, Donald Trump. Donald Trump and Pompeo went ahead and signed a deal with the Taliban. And may I remind you, Shri, these people are unsafe in the regions controlled by the Taliban. They are not unsafe in the regions controlled by the Afghan national government, which frankly has been betrayed by this agreement with the Taliban and Mike Pompeo. I think this is going to dog Mike Pompeo for the rest of his life, the way Jaswant Singh was dogged for the rest of his life for what he has done. In the Kathmandu hijack, releasing those hardened terrorists and ferrying them across to Afghanistan. So I want to say, Shri, that there is a terrible genocide of minorities taking place. And just these four statistics, one day you should just say what they are. What was the minority populations in, let's say, 1947, What were they in 67? What were they in 87? What were they in, let's say, 2017? And that will give you the whole horrible story. So I'm glad this is happening. And the second point I want to raise, it also shows that the Wahhabi lobby is finally facing a pushback. I was a little disappointed because I know, I mean, Joe Biden is very close to Clintons, and Clintons are, I mean, if you look at the Clinton Foundation money, there are two sources for that money. One source is in the Middle East, and one source is in East Asia. And there has been no serious investigation as to the origins of the Clinton Foundation money. And and I think it was to protect the Clintons that this entire hubbub was raised about the Ukraine deal and Donald Trump. But the reality of situation is that the Wahhabi lobby is the one which is viscerally creating bad feelings about India, and which is helping its a very trusted ally Pakistan, not Pakistan, but the Pakistan army. So these senators coming forward, they have boldly challenged the Wahhabi lobby. And at least these people have challenged the Wahhabi lobby. Bernie Sanders definitely has nothing to do with the Wahhabi lobby. Kamala Harris, an outstanding parliamentarian from your state, and other people, and of course Chuck Schumer. I'm glad to see Chuck Schumer in that list because it's now very clear Schumer has escaped the Wahhabi lobby in a way, I'm sorry to say, I don't think Lindsey Graham has so far, or I'm sorry to say, Mitch McConnell.
Yes, indeed. And Professor Nalapat, now a much worse genocide of sorts is taking place in Pakistan, in the rural parts of Sindh and in Punjab. You see, there are 7 million Hindus still stuck in Pakistan. India can only absorb them at 1,000 a month because of the logistics involved. They cannot resettle them that fast. So there are some challenges as to how fast India can accept them. I mean, this is regardless of the CAA bill, which stops at December 2014. Now, the records are saying that every day, 3 members of the minorities, Sikh, Christian, Hindu, are being forcibly raped, sometimes by the whole village, and then married off to some old person, or sometimes somebody who's already married and divorced. All sorts of things are happening, and yet the world has not taken cognizance of that. In fact, the thing is going as if nothing is happening in Pakistan, and every little thing that Pakistan tries to create is being played up to the masses. So, Professor Nalapat, what do you think? Do you think that the same set of senators, or perhaps an even bigger slate of senators, are going to write to Mike Pompeo to look into the atrocities being committed against the minorities in Pakistan?
Well, that would be a direct challenge to the Wahhabi lobby. But I simply want to point to the failure of the Indian state over 70 years to protect, and I don't mean protect, frankly, in terms of giving citizenship. I've always felt that they should be ensured that they are safe in Pakistan, and that should be ensured, because there's nothing the Wahhabis want better than to get all these people removed as quickly as possible, those who are so strong enough to resist the kind of coercion. My point is, by this time, some kind of an NGO, some international NGOs should have managed to give every member of the minority community in Pakistan a weapon. What is that weapon? The weapon is the smartphone, and give internet access and the smartphone access to every member of the minority community, so that they can flash the images of torture and the violence and terror, and then the world will have to take notice. Why is it that nobody is noticing? Because the people who are being tortured, I mean, they have no technology, and the ones who have the technology, as you correctly said, the overwhelming majority of people in some of these villages, they are gleefully participating in this torture and in this rape and in this forcible conversion. So the reality is, how will the world know the dwindling minorities in these countries need to be provided with smartphones and smartphone access? How much will it cost? 50 million, 100 million, 150 million US dollars. That's about it. And who can object? If, let's say, an American NGO goes, Pakistanis may have a problem with an Indian NGO, but we have an American NGO goes, Americans go there and hand over smartphones and internet access across the board to the members of minority community. I can tell you, then more and more of this horror that's taking place will come out. And in this information warfare, I'm sorry to say, Sri, the Pakistanis, from when we're talking about 10 victories, 9 victories have been won by the Pakistanis and by the Wahhabi International with fake news against India. And India may have won one or half a victory with true news. The reality is, even today, the Indian government is hoarding information about what it knows about the situation in these countries. Why are they doing that? Why is it that even today it is so difficult to get information out of government agencies? Why is it that the RTI, is hardly functioning in India? And why is it that the people who are appointed to the RTI are people who have spent their entire careers, official careers, 30 years, 35 years, 40 years, suppressing information from the public? Is that what RTI is meant to be? That was probably what Sonia Gandhi wanted it to be, which is why Manmohan Singh packed it with all kinds of people who are in the bureaucracy and who have long believed that the Indian people don't deserve information. But unfortunately, this is among the many things which the current government has carried forward without any kind of change whatsoever from the Sonia Gandhi period. You and I have often talked about the fact that, Chidambaram almost seems to be still in control of many parts of the system. And this is another example of the fact that the people who are in the UPA, who did so much of harm, they are still active everywhere like termites. And I can tell you that one day, I hope it is not too late, this is going to be realized by some of the leaders who are now running the country.
I couldn't agree with you more, Professor Nalapat. Prime Minister Modi and his cabinet are well-meaning. They're probably one of the most patriotic in terms of wanting to do good by the people of India. Many of the schemes, all well-intended. However, somewhere, the implementation phase, things kind of go pear-shaped. And I really hope that those who are in control of finding how this is going would share that information with us. We are happy to talk about the atrocities being committed over the minorities in Pakistan and Bangladesh. Professor Nalapat, something that really, really hurt me was an advertisement in a Pakistani newspaper where they were advertising for people who can clean the sewers. And they said only Christians need to apply. It appears that this minority community has been deemed fit to do only that. What is their fault? How can go ahead, please go ahead.
No, I want to ask you, you have a very large so-called Christian group in the United States, Baptists and various other denominations. Frankly, do they believe that only people of European origin are Christian? Do they believe that anybody who is not a European is not really a Christian? For example, in Syria, there have been the freedom fighters that the United States and the European Union have supported. It is in the territories controlled by these EU and United States-backed fighters that Christians are being slaughtered. You go on YouTube and you will see multiple instances of Christians having their terrible things being done to them in the territories of the so-called freedom fighters. I have myself seen, in many parts of the Middle East, they come there after the slaughter, then they go to Turkey, and Erdogan is still doing still helping this kind of Wahhabi groups, and Erdogan is being protected by guess who? By Donald Trump. Donald Trump is refusing to sanction Erdogan for even the S-400. So what is the reason for that? The reason is the immense money power of the Wahhabi lobby. Let me tell you one thing, Sri. What is heartening to me, this is the first crack I'm seeing in the monolithic power of the Wahhabi lobby to buy American influence and American support. And this lobby has operated for decades, and a lot of people are in its pocket. The only problem is the American people don't know who are in its pocket, and I think the Wahhabi lobby needs to be exposed.
Yes, indeed. And we are doing our bit, Professor Nalapat, to do this. And we know we have identified some organizations, we have looked at their work, and they continue to spew venom against India. For some reason, India is their favorite target, always going after India. And, in the name of Islamophobia, which is a fake narrative, they are actually Islamizing the countries that they are operating in. You take European countries, you take United Kingdom, and now you see it washing up in the shores of Toronto, in Canada and United States. Now in United States, they are demanding that the Azan be allowed to be played at 4:30 a.m. What noise pollution? Why is it that these people want to do the same thing over and over? The playbook hasn't changed, yet the countries seem to be very hesitant to respond to them. I really don't know, but I think there's a lot of food. Go ahead, please go ahead.
Well, I simply want to say that the tragedy is that the overwhelming majority of Muslims who are modern and moderate, they are ignored by policymakers and they're ignored by the media, and only this 5 to 15% who are Wahhabi are cultivated. They are the only ones who figure in the media because they say, oh, anybody who's not a Wahhabi is not really a good Muslim. I mean, this is absurd, and so you have a monopoly of Wahhabism on the media and in the political class. The only people they take seriously are the Wahhabis. So this is the problem. And the reality of situation is that, look, I mean, in India, for example, I have long held the view, I have written multiple times, that the three holy sites of the Hindus, I mean, I don't think that's such an unreasonable thing, that Mathura, Kashi, and Ayodhya, they are three holy sites, and only the three holy sites should at least go back to the traditions that they had before Emperor Aurangzeb. Let them go back to the traditions that were there during Jahangir and Shah Jahan. What is so terribly Islamophobic about it? Those who talk about Islamophobia, frankly, for them, Islam is something which, very honestly, it is not. And the overwhelming majority of Muslims do not subscribe to it. But many of us, we do not support those Muslims. We only take seriously the 5 to 15% Wahhabi lobby. Look at Kashmir. Look at the complete attention given only to Wahhabis. Everybody else is ignored, whether it's in the media, whether it is by governments, whether it is in financial assistance, only Wahhabis. And of course, forget about the Kashmiri Pandits, they've been completely forgotten. But even the other Muslims, the moderate Sunni, the Shia, the Bakarwals, the Gujars, ignored.
Dogras, yeah.
Dogras, of course. I mean, I'm not talking only the Hindu minority there. I'm talking about the Muslim majority.
Yes,
the overwhelming
yes.
majority of the majority is ignored.
Right. Well, Professor Nalapat, let's hope that this is the first in a series of good things to happen. United States is in the cusp of a very significant election, and a lot of things are going to set the strategy for the next decade. And let's hope that I'll let you have the last word. Let's hope that these things go on to become a more fruitful relationship between India and the United States. Sir, you wanted to say something?
I simply want to say, Sri, that you have been talking for a long time about a strong defense and security alliance between India and the United States. That's why, for example, I've been not at all happy about this S-400, which I'm told the Chinese have now got into their border. And frankly, we talk about, Russian-built aircraft. The Chinese know these aircraft, they know their parameters, and the Russians will tell them exactly, what their problems are. So we need a strong alliance with the Americans. The Americans need a strong alliance with us. I think slowly, I can tell you, this particular step is giving me hope that the United States is discovering the need for a friendly India. And in India, I hope more people are going to realize the essentiality of a close alliance between the United States and India. As you said, this bit of good news, of the significance of which you have captured very well on P. And let me say, you are abused, I am abused. I mean, I have even been called some horrible names. Why? Because I defend moderate Muslims against the Wahhabis. So Wahhabis, call me names, and they try to keep the moderate Muslims silent, and they don't like moderate Muslims coming their own. And my point is, it's now the moderate Muslims need to come out and speak out against Wahhabis and Wahhabism. There is no Islamophobia. There is Wahhabism phobia, and it is being confused for Islamophobia. It is not Islamophobia, it is Wahhabism phobia.
Yes, indeed. And thank you very much, Professor Nalapad. We'll be back with more such interesting developments that are taking place in the United States. Once again, thank you very much for joining our panel.
Thank you.
Namaskar.